The arrival. Admiral Sarah Chen stood at the panoramic window of Lunar Base Alpha, her dark eyes fixed on the blue marble of Earth hanging in the void. At 52, her salt and pepper hair was cut in a practical military style, and her face bore the lines of a woman who had seen more than her fair share of crises. But nothing in her long career had prepared her for this moment. "Admiral," a voice called from behind her, "the Security Council is ready for you." Sarah turned to face her aide, Lieutenant Rajesh Patel, a brilliant young officer whose usual cheerful demeanor was now replaced by a grim expression. She nodded, straightening her uniform before following him to the command center. The large, circular room was a hive of activity. Holographic displays flickered with real-time data from across the solar system, while officers and scientists huddled around consoles, speaking in hushed, urgent tones. At the center stood a large table, its surface alive with a three-dimensional representation of Earth and its orbital defenses. As Sarah approached, the chatter died down. The faces of the United Earth Security Council appeared on screens around the room, their expressions a mix of fear and determination. "Admiral Chen," began Counselor Amelia Rhodes, her Australian accent tinged with worry. "What's the status of our defenses?" Sarah took a deep breath. "Counselors, as of 600 hours this morning, we've achieved full deployment of the Aegis network. All major population centers are now protected by energy shields. Our orbital defense platforms are at 100% capacity, and the lunar railguns are primed and ready." "And Project Prometheus?" asked Counselor Yuki Tanaka, leaning forward. Sarah's jaw tightened. "Dr. Reeves assures me that the system is operational, but—" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "It remains untested in actual combat conditions." A murmur ran through the assembled officials. Project Prometheus was humanity's ace in the hole, a weapon of last resort that had consumed trillions in resources and the better part of a decade to develop. Based on reverse-engineered alien technology, it promised to be the equalizer humanity desperately needed. "It will have to be enough," said Counselor Ibrahim Nazari, his voice grave. "The Xeraxian fleet has just passed the orbit of Neptune. At their current speed, they'll reach Earth in less than 72 hours. The room fell silent as the reality of the situation sank in. For years, humanity had watched as the Xeraxians carved a path of destruction across the galaxy. Hundreds of civilizations had fallen to their relentless advance, their worlds stripped of resources, and their populations enslaved or worse. Earth was the last bastion of resistance in this sector of space, and everyone knew that the coming battle would determine the fate of not just humanity, but countless other species who looked to Earth as their last hope. "What about evacuation efforts?" asked Counselor Lai Wei, breaking the silence. Sarah pulled up a new set of data on the holographic display. "We've managed to relocate approximately 15% of the global population to our underground shelters and off-world colonies. But with the Xeraxians' arrival imminent, we've had to suspend further evacuations to focus on our defensive preparations." The faces of the counselors grew grim. They all knew what that meant. Billions of people would be caught in the crossfire when the invasion began. "Admiral," Counselor Rhodes said, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment, "you have full authority to execute the defense of Earth by any means necessary. May God be with us all." As the transmission ended, Sarah turned to face her staff. She could see the fear in their eyes, but also the determination. They had trained for this moment, prepared as best they could. Now, it was time to put it all to the test. "All right, people," she said, her voice ringing out across the command center. "This is what we've been preparing for. I want hourly updates on the Xeraxian fleet's position. Major Kowalski, coordinate with the orbital defense platforms. Make sure every gunner knows their target assignments. Dr. Reeves," she turned to a disheveled man in a rumpled lab coat, "I need you to run every possible simulation on Project Prometheus. When the time comes, we can't afford any surprises." As her staff sprang into action, Sarah felt a tap on her shoulder. She turned to find Lieutenant Patel, his young face a mask of concern. "Admiral," he said quietly, "there's something you need to see." He led her to a private console and pulled up a classified transmission. Sarah's eyes widened as she read the contents. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Patel nodded grimly. "It's been confirmed by 3 separate deep space listening posts. The Zoraxians, they're not alone." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. The invasion force heading towards Earth was already the largest the Zoraxians had ever assembled. If they had allies, she straightened up, pushing the fear down. There would be time for worry later. Right now, her people needed her to be strong. "Keep this information classified for now," she ordered. "The last thing we need is panic. But alert our intelligence division. I want to know everything about these new players before they reach our doorstep." As Paddle hurried off to carry out her orders, Sarah turned back to the window, gazing out at the stars. Somewhere out there, an armada was bearing down on her homeworld, intent on its destruction. But humanity had survived ice ages, plagues, and its own self-destructive tendencies. They would survive this too. They had to. Dr. Elias Reeves hunched over his workstation in the bowels of Lunar Base Alpha, his fingers flying over holographic keyboards as he ran simulation after simulation. At 45, he looked a decade older, his curly hair prematurely gray, and his face lined with the stress of years spent working on humanity's most closely guarded secret. Project Prometheus wasn't just a weapon. It was a fundamental reimagining of the laws of physics, a technology so advanced that most of the scientific community had dismissed it as impossible. But Elias had seen the proof. In the wreckage of a Zoraxian scout ship that had crashed in the Atacama Desert 15 years ago. The alien device had been unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. It manipulated gravity and space-time itself, allowing for feats that seemed to defy the very laws of nature. Elias had devoted his life to understanding it, to replicating its effects on a scale large enough to defend a planet. And now, with the enemy at their doorstep, he was running out of time. "Dr. Reeves." Elias looked up, blinking as his eyes adjusted to the dim light of the lab. A young woman in a crisp military uniform stood before him, a steaming cup of coffee in her hand. "Lieutenant Carter," he mumbled, accepting the coffee gratefully. "Any news from up top?" Samantha Carter, his military liaison, and one of the few people cleared to know the full scope of Project Prometheus, shook her head. "Nothing new. The Zoraxians are still on course. We've got about 60 hours until they enter the kill zone." Elias took a long sip of coffee, grimacing at the bitter taste. "Not enough time," he muttered. "We're close, so close, but the power requirements are off the charts. If we can't stabilize the gravimetric field, the whole thing could collapse into a singularity." Samantha's eyes widened. "You mean it could create a black hole?" "Here." Elias nodded grimly. "Best case scenario. It swallows the moon, and maybe Mars. Worst case, well, let's just say the Zoraxians wouldn't have much of a solar system left to conquer." The lieutenant let out a low whistle. "No pressure, then." Despite the gravity of the situation, Elias couldn't help but crack a smile. Samantha had been his rock throughout this project, her quick wit and unwavering optimism a constant source of support in the face of seemingly insurmountable challenges. "How are the power relays holding up?" he asked, pulling up a new set of diagnostics on his screen. Samantha consulted her datapad. "We're at 92% capacity. The fusion reactors are stable, but we're pushing them to their limits. Any more power, and we risk a cascade failure." Elias ran a hand through his disheveled hair, his mind racing. They were so close to a breakthrough. He could feel it. But with the fate of humanity hanging in the balance, close wasn't good enough. "Okay," he said, standing up and stretching his aching back. "Let's try something crazy. What if we use the moon itself as a power source?" Samantha's brow furrowed. "I don't follow." Elias began pacing, his words coming faster as the idea took shape. "The moon's core is still partially molten. If we could tap into that energy, use it to supplement our fusion reactors, we could generate enough power to stabilize the gravimetric field. Samantha finished, her eyes lighting up with understanding. But the engineering challenges alone would be immense, yes, Elias cut in, but not impossible. And right now, impossible is a luxury we can't afford. He turned to his workstation, fingers already flying over the keys. Get me a line to Admiral Chen. We're going to need every engineer and geologist on this base if we're going to pull this off. As Samantha hurried to make the call, Elias felt a surge of renewed energy. It was a long shot, but it was the best chance they had. And if it worked, it might just give humanity the edge it needed to survive the coming storm. In the vast, cold expanse of the outer solar system, the Xeraxian Armada pressed forward, a dark cloud blotting out the stars. At its heart was the Worldrender, a vessel so massive it dwarfed even the largest of Earth's cities. Within its cavernous command center, High Commander Zarketh surveyed the holographic display of the Sol system, his 4 eyes narrowing in anticipation. "Report," he growled, his voice a low rumble that sent ripples through the nutrient bath that sustained his massive, serpentine body. A smaller Xeraxian, its exoskeleton, a dull green compared to Zarketh's obsidian black, slithered forward. "High Commander, our long-range scans have detected significant energy signatures around the third planet. It appears the humans have erected some kind of planetary shield." Zarketh let out a sound that might have been a laugh, if not for the complete lack of mirth in it. Foolish creatures. Do they truly believe such primitive technology can stand against the might of the Xeraxian Empire? "There's more, High Commander," the underling continued, its voice quavering slightly. "We've also detected unusual gravitational anomalies in the vicinity of their moon. The readings are inconsistent with any known technology." For the first time, a flicker of something like concern passed across Zarketh's alien features. The humans were known to be resourceful, yes, but they were centuries behind the Xeraxians in technological development. What could they have possibly created that would cause such readings? "Increase our speed," Zarketh ordered, his massive coils shifting restlessly. "I want us in attack range within 50 planetary rotations, and send word to our allies. Tell them to be ready." As his underlings rushed to carry out his commands, Zarketh turned his gaze back to the holographic representation of Earth. For millennia, the Xeraxian Empire had expanded unchecked across the galaxy, consuming world after world, species after species. But something about this insignificant blue planet made Zarketh uneasy. The humans were young, their civilization barely out of its infancy by galactic standards. And yet, they had resisted the lure of Xeraxian technology, had spurned offers of protection that had ensnared so many other races. They were unpredictable, adaptable in ways that the rigid Xeraxian hierarchy struggled to comprehend. For the first time in his long life, Zarketh felt a twinge of doubt. He pushed it aside, focusing instead on the glory that awaited him. Earth would fall, as all others had before it. And if the humans had some secret weapon, some last-ditch effort to stave off the inevitable, well, that would just make the victory all the sweeter. Little did Zarketh know that far below, in the hidden laboratories of Lunar Base Alpha, humanity was about to change the rules of the game entirely. First contact. The tension in Lunar Base Alpha's command center was palpable as the countdown timer ticked relentlessly towards 0. Admiral Sarah Chen stood at the center of the storm, her calm demeanor a stark contrast to the nervous energy that permeated the room. The Xeraxian fleet had just crossed the orbit of Mars, their massive ships casting long shadows across the red planet. "Status report," Sarah commanded, her voice cutting through the chatter. Major Kowalski stepped forward, his face grim. "Admiral, the Aegis network is at full power. All major cities on Earth are shielded. Our orbital platforms are armed and tracking multiple targets." Sarah nodded, then turned to Dr. Reeves, who looked like he hadn't slept in days. "Doctor, what's the status of Project Prometheus?" Elias Reeves ran a hand through his disheveled hair. We're as ready as we'll ever be, Admiral. The lunar core tap is operational, but we've never tested it at full capacity. There's no telling what might happen when we activate the system. Let's hope we don't have to find out, Sarah muttered. She turned to face the main view screen, where the incoming Ziraxian fleet was now visible, a dark mass blotting out the stars. All stations, battle stations. This is not a drill. May God have mercy on us all. As klaxons blared throughout the base, Lieutenant Patel approached Sarah, his young face a mask of determination. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the Ziraxian flagship. They're demanding our surrender. Sarah's jaw tightened. Put it through. The view screen flickered, and suddenly they were face to face with High Commander Zarketh. The massive Ziraxian's 4 eyes glowed with an inner fire, his serpentine body coiled menacingly. Humans, Zarketh's voice boomed, the translator struggling to convey the alien timbre. Your pitiful defenses are no match for the might of the Ziraxian Empire. Surrender now, and we may yet show mercy. Sarah stepped forward, her voice steady. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. We will not surrender. This is our home, and we will defend it to our last breath. Turn back now, or face the consequences. Zarketh's eyes narrowed, a sound like grinding stones emanating from his throat. So be it. Your world will burn, and your species will be but a memory. The transmission cut off abruptly. For a moment, there was silence in the command center. Then, chaos erupted. Multiple incoming projectiles. Major Kowalski shouted. They're targeting our orbital defenses. Sarah's mind raced. This was it, the moment they had prepared for, feared, and in some ways, longed for. Now they would see if humanity's determination and ingenuity were a match for the Ziraxian war machine. Initiate countermeasures, she ordered. All platforms, return fire. Focus on their lidships. Let's see how tough these bastards really are. The void of space lit up as Earth's defenses sprang to life. Railguns on the lunar surface spat hypervelocity rounds, while orbital platforms unleashed salvos of missiles and energy beams. The Ziraxian fleet responded in kind, their advanced weaponry tearing through the outer layers of Earth's defenses like tissue paper. But as the first Ziraxian ships entered low Earth orbit, they encountered something unexpected. The Aegis network, a web of energy shields powered by fusion reactors across the planet, flared to life. The alien weapons, so devastating against conventional defenses, splashed harmlessly against the shimmering barriers. In the command center, a cheer went up. It's working. Lieutenant Carter exclaimed, her eyes wide with disbelief. The shields are holding. Sarah allowed herself a small smile, but she knew this was just the beginning. The Ziraxians would adapt, find a way through. They needed to press their advantage while they had it. All units, concentrate fire on their capital ships, she commanded. Let's see if we can't give them a bloody nose. As the battle raged in orbit, Dr. Reeves worked feverishly at his console, monitoring the power levels of Project Prometheus. The lunar core tap was performing beyond his wildest expectations, channeling the moon's geothermal energy into the massive gravimetric array. We're approaching critical mass, he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. Just a little more. Suddenly, alarms blared across his workstation. Elias's head snapped up, his face pale. No, this can't be happening. Lieutenant Carter was at his side in an instant. What is it? What's wrong? Elias's fingers flew across the keyboard, his eyes darting from one readout to another. The power influx from the lunar core. It's destabilizing the gravimetric field. If we don't shut it down, we could trigger a catastrophic collapse. Carter's eyes widened in horror. A black hole. Here. Elias nodded grimly. Worse. At this energy level, we could tear a hole in the fabric of space-time itself. We need to warn the Admiral. We have to abort. As they raced towards the command center, the battle above took a dire turn. The Xeraxians, momentarily caught off guard by Earth's defenses, had regrouped. Their ships moved with eerie synchronization, concentrating their fire on specific points of the Aegis network. "Admiral," Major Kowalski called out, his voice tight with stress. "They're targeting the shield generators on the ground. Rio de Janeiro's defenses are failing." Sarah watched in horror as the shield over the Brazilian city flickered and died. Xeraxian weapons fire rained down, leveling entire city blocks in seconds. Millions of lives snuffed out in an instant. "Reroute power from secondary systems," she ordered, her voice hoarse. "We need to reinforce those shields." But it was too late. Like a dam breaking, shield after shield began to fail across the globe. The Xeraxians pressed their advantage, their ships descending into Earth's atmosphere, laying waste to everything in their path. It was at this moment that Dr. Reeves burst into the command center, his face ashen. "Admiral, we have to shut down Project Prometheus immediately. The system is destabilizing. If we don't act now, we could lose everything." Sarah felt the weight of the world on her shoulders. Project Prometheus was their ace in the hole, their last, best hope against the Xeraxian onslaught. But if what Reeves was saying was true— "Do it," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Shut it down." As Reeves rushed to comply, Sarah turned back to the main view screen. The Xeraxian fleet was pushing deeper into Earth's atmosphere, their weapons carving scars across continents. This was it, she realized. The end of everything. But then, something impossible happened. Just as Reeves initiated the shutdown sequence for Project Prometheus, a massive surge of energy coursed through the system. The gravimetric array, already on the brink of collapse, twisted in ways its creators had never intended. And in that moment, reality itself seemed to bend. A blinding light erupted from the lunar surface, expanding outward in a wave that engulfed the Earth, the Xeraxian fleet, and everything in between. For a heartbeat, the universe held its breath. When the light faded, the command center was deathly quiet. Sarah blinked, trying to clear the spots from her vision. As the main view screen came back into focus, she gasped. The Xeraxian fleet was gone. Not destroyed, not scattered, but simply gone. In their place was empty space, as if they had never been there at all. What just happened?" Lieutenant Potil asked, his voice trembling. Dr. Reeves stared at his readouts, his face a mix of awe and terror. I think we just created a localized temporal displacement field. We didn't destroy the Xeraxians. We sent them. Somewhere else. Someone else." As the implications of what had just occurred began to sink in, alarms blared across the command center. Lieutenant Carter's voice cut through the chaos. "Admiral, we're detecting massive gravitational disturbances throughout the solar system. Whatever we did, I think it's still happening." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. They had saved Earth, yes, but at what cost? What forces had they unleashed upon the universe? As she opened her mouth to speak, to try and bring some order to the chaos, a new alert sounded. Lieutenant Patel's eyes widened as he read the incoming transmission. "Admiral," he said, his voice filled with disbelief. "We're receiving a signal. It's from Jupiter. Something's happening out there." Sarah turned to the view screen, watching in awe as the largest planet in their solar system began to shimmer and distort. It was as if reality itself was bending around Jupiter, twisting it into impossible shapes. And then, emerging from the swirling chaos, came something that defied explanation. A massive structure, easily the size of Earth's moon, materializing in Jupiter's orbit. It was clearly artificial, its surface covered in intricate patterns that pulsed with an inner light. "My God," Dr. Reeves whispered. "What is that?" Before anyone could respond, a transmission cut through all frequencies, filling the command center with a voice that seemed to bypass their ears and speak directly to their minds. "People of Earth," the voice said, its tone neither male nor female. neither young nor old, but somehow all of these at once. We have watched your struggle. We have seen your courage in the face of annihilation. And now, at last, you are ready. Sarah found her voice, though it sounded small and insignificant in the face of this new wonder. Ready for what? The response came not in words, but in images that flooded their minds. Visions of a galaxy teeming with life, of civilizations rising and falling across the ends, of a war that had raged since the dawn of time itself. Ready to join the fight, the voice said. The Xeraxians are but one face of the enemy. The true battle, the one that will determine the fate of all existence, is only beginning. And you, humanity, have just fired the opening shot. As the implications of these words sank in, Sarah realized that the Xeraxian invasion, as terrible as it had been, was merely the prologue. The real story, one that would reshape the destiny of not just Earth, but the entire universe, was about to begin. And humanity, for better or worse, was now at the center of it all. The counterattack. The days following the Xeraxian invasion and the appearance of the mysterious structure near Jupiter were a blur of frantic activity. Earth's leaders struggled to come to terms with the new reality they found themselves in, while scientists worked around the clock to understand the implications of what had occurred. Admiral Sarah Chen stood before the United Earth Security Council, her uniform crisp despite the exhaustion evident on her face. The faces on the screens before her were a mix of awe, fear, and determination. Admiral. Counselor Rhodes began, her voice steady but strained. Can you please summarize the current situation for us? Sarah took a deep breath. Counselors, the good news is that the immediate threat from the Xeraxian invasion has been neutralized. Our best estimates suggest that the entire fleet was displaced approximately 10,000 years into the past. A murmur ran through the assembled officials. Counselor Nazari leaned forward, his brow furrowed. And the bad news? The bad news, Sarah continued, is that we've inadvertently thrust ourselves onto a much larger stage. The entity that contacted us from the Jupiter anomaly has been forthcoming with information. They call themselves the Guardians, and they claim to be part of an ancient coalition of species fighting against a force they call the entropy. She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. The Xeraxians, it turns out, are just one of many races that have been corrupted and weaponized by the entropy. This enemy, as far as we can tell, is less a species and more a concept, a force of cosmic destruction that seeks to unravel the very fabric of reality. The room was silent for a long moment. Finally, Counselor Lai Wei spoke up. And where do we fit into all this? Admiral. Sarah's expression hardened. According to the Guardians, our use of Project Prometheus didn't just save Earth. It awakened something in us, a potential that they've been waiting eons to see realized. They believe that humanity might be the key to finally turning the tide in this war. And if we refuse? Counselor Tanaka asked, her voice barely above a whisper. That isn't an option, Sarah replied grimly. The entropy knows about us now. Whether we like it or not, we're in this fight. The only choice we have is how we face it. As the council digested this information, Sarah pressed on. The Guardians have offered us access to technology beyond our wildest dreams. Faster than light travel, energy manipulation on a stellar scale, even the ability to manipulate time itself. But it comes at a price. They need us to take the fight to the enemy. Counselor Rhodes leaned back in her chair, her face a mask of determination. What are you proposing, Admiral? Sarah straightened, her voice ringing with conviction. A counterattack. We use the Guardians' technology to upgrade our fleet. Then we take the fight directly to the Xeraxians' home territory. We strike them before they can recover from the loss of their invasion force. The council chambers erupted in a flurry of debate. Some argued for caution, for taking time to better understand their new allies and the threat they faced. Others pushed for immediate action, seeing this as humanity's chance to secure its place among the stars. In the end, it was Counselor Nazari who silenced the room. We've spent our entire history reacting, always on the defensive. For once, let's seize the initiative. I say we approve the Admiral's plan. One by one, the other counselors nodded their agreement. Sarah felt the weight of their decision settle on her shoulders. The fate of not just humanity, but perhaps the entire universe, now rested in her hands. As the council session ended, Sarah made her way to the research wing of Lunar Base Alpha. She found Dr. Elias Reeves hunched over a workstation, surrounded by holographic displays filled with equations and diagrams that defied comprehension. "Doctor," she called out, startling him from his work. "How are we progressing with the Guardian technology?" Elias looked up, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep but shining with excitement. It's beyond anything I could have imagined, Admiral. Their understanding of physics makes our most advanced theories look like a child's crayon drawings." He gestured to one of the displays, which showed a complex, multi-dimensional structure. "This is the core of their FTL drive. It doesn't just move a ship through space. It folds space itself around the vessel. We could reach the nearest star system in a matter of hours." Sarah nodded, trying to wrap her head around the implications. "And our weapons?" Elias's expression grew serious. "That's where things get interesting. The Guardians have provided us with designs for weapons that don't just destroy matter. They erase it from existence. Completely. No debris, no radiation. Just gone." A chill ran down Sarah's spine. The power they were dealing with was beyond anything humanity had ever wielded. The potential for misuse was staggering. "How long until we can begin integrating this technology into our fleet?" she asked. Elias ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "With the resources of every major nation focused on this project, we could have a prototype vessel ready for testing within a month, a small fleet within 3. Sarah's mind raced with the possibilities. It was an insanely short time frame, but every moment they delayed was another moment the enemy had to prepare. "Make it happen, Doctor," she said, her voice filled with resolve. "Humanity is going to war, and I intend to make sure we're ready for it." As Sarah left the research wing, her comm unit buzzed. Lieutenant Patel's voice came through, tinged with urgency. "Admiral, we're receiving another transmission from the Jupiter anomaly. They say they're ready to begin your training." Sarah froze mid-step. "My training?" "Yes, ma'am," Patel replied. "The Guardians insist that as the leader of Earth's defense, you need to undergo some kind of preparation. They won't say much more, only that it's crucial for the coming conflict." Sarah closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. She had known, on some level, that her role in this war would be more than just giving orders from a command center. But the reality of it was still overwhelming. "Tell them I'm on my way," she said, her voice steady despite the turmoil in her mind. As she made her way to the shuttle bay, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking into something that would change her forever. The journey to the Guardian structure was surreal. The shuttle, upgraded with their new allies' technology, crossed the vast distance between the Moon and Jupiter in a matter of minutes. As they approached the massive construct, Sarah felt a sense of vertigo. The structure seemed to shift and change as she looked at it, its geometry defying her understanding of space. As the shuttle docked, Sarah was met not by a physical being, but by a shimmering field of energy that coalesced into a vaguely humanoid shape. "Admiral Chen," the being spoke, its voice resonating in her mind rather than her ears. "We have much to show you, and little time in which to do it." Before Sarah could respond, the world around her dissolved into a kaleidoscope of light and sensation. She felt herself stretched and compressed, her consciousness expanding to encompass vast swathes of space and time. In what felt like both an eternity and an instant, Sarah experienced the history of the universe. She saw galaxies form and die, witnessed the birth and extinction of countless civilizations, and through it all, she sensed the creeping darkness of the entropy, forever seeking to unravel the tapestry of existence. When the visions finally subsided, Sarah found herself back in her own body, gasping for breath. The Guardian stood before her, its energy form pulsing gently. "Now you understand," it said, its mental voice tinged with what might have been sadness. "The scope of the conflict, the stakes for which we fight." Sarah struggled to her feet, her mind reeling from the experience. How can we possibly hope to win against something like that? The Guardian's form shimmered, and Sarah felt a sense of determination emanating from it. "Because you, humanity, possess something unique, a spark of potential that we have nurtured across eons. The ability to change the very rules of reality." It gestured, and a holographic display appeared, showing the incident with Project Prometheus. "What you did here was not just a fluke, Admiral. It was the first manifestation of humanity's true power. With proper training, you will be able to manipulate the fabric of space-time itself." Sarah's mind raced with the implications. "You're saying we can, what? Control time? Rewrite history?" "In a manner of speaking," the Guardian replied. "But such power comes with great responsibility and even greater danger. The entropy will stop at nothing to corrupt or destroy those with this ability. That is why we must act swiftly, strike before they can fully mobilize against us." Over the next several weeks, Sarah underwent a grueling regimen of mental and physical training. She learned to perceive reality on levels she had never imagined, to sense the underlying currents of space-time, and in small ways, to influence them. As her training progressed, reports came in from Earth. The fleet was taking shape, a dozen ships of a design that melded human ingenuity with Guardian technology. They were sleek, powerful vessels that could outmaneuver and outgun anything the Ziraxians had fielded during their invasion attempt. Finally, the day of reckoning arrived. Sarah stood on the bridge of the HFY Prometheus, Earth's new flagship, as it prepared to lead the fleet into their first major offensive. The ship hummed with power, its systems a harmonious blend of human and Guardian engineering. Dr. Reeves, who had insisted on joining the mission, manned the science station. His eyes were wide with a mix of excitement and trepidation as he monitored the ship's revolutionary drive system. "All ships report ready, Admiral," Lieutenant Patel announced from his position at communications. Sarah took a deep breath, feeling the weight of history on her shoulders. This was it, the moment that would define humanity's place in the cosmos. "Send word to Earth," she commanded, her voice steady. "Operation Starfall is a go. May God have mercy on us all." As one, the fleet engaged their FTL drives. Space itself seemed to bend and twist around them, and in a flash of otherworldly light, they were gone, hurtling across the galaxy towards the heart of Ziraxian space. The counterattack had begun, and with it, a new chapter in the history of not just Earth, but the entire universe. As the Prometheus led the charge into the unknown, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of a conflict that would reshape reality itself. Little did she know that far across the galaxy, in the twisted realm that the Ziraxians called home, forces were already aligning against them. The entropy, awakened to the threat that humanity posed, was preparing a response that would test the very limits of their newfound power. The stage was set for a confrontation that would determine the fate of all existence, and at the center of it all was humanity, a young species thrust into a war as old as time itself, armed with powers they were only beginning to understand. As the fleet hurtled through the void, Sarah Chen steeled herself for the battles to come. Whatever lay ahead, she knew one thing for certain: the universe would never be the same again. Turning point. The vast emptiness of space erupted in a dazzling display of light as the Earth fleet dropped out of FTL on the outskirts of the Ziraxian home system. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the HFY Prometheus, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. A dozen worlds orbited a massive red giant star, each one bristling with defenses that made Earth's most fortified installations look like child's play. "Status report," Sarah commanded, her voice steady despite the tension that hung in the air. Lieutenant Patel's fingers danced across his console. All ships accounted for. Admiral. No detection from enemy sensors yet. It looks like our Guardian Tech stealth systems are holding. Dr. Reeves spoke up from the science station, his voice tinged with awe. The amount of energy they're harnessing from that star. It's incredible. They've built Dyson swarms around most of the inner planets. Sarah nodded grimly. The Xeraxians' technological prowess was even more impressive than they had anticipated. But they had an ace up their sleeve, one the enemy couldn't possibly expect. Begin Phase 1, she ordered. Let's see how they handle a little chaos. Across the fleet, specially trained crews began to focus their newly awakened abilities. They reached out with their minds, touching the fabric of space-time itself. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Then, almost imperceptibly, reality began to warp. On the tactical display, Sarah watched as gravitational anomalies began to form throughout the Xeraxian system. Satellites drifted off course, communication relays faltered, and defense platforms began to malfunction. It's working, Dr. Reeves breathed, his eyes wide as he monitored the readings. The localized temporal distortions are causing widespread system failures across their network. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. The Guardians had been right. Humanity's unique ability to manipulate space-time was proving to be a powerful weapon. But she knew this was just the opening salvo. All ships, prepare for combat maneuvers, she commanded. Weapons hot. Let's introduce ourselves. The Earth fleet surged forward, their advanced drives allowing them to dance between the strands of the Dyson swarms with impossible grace. As they closed in on the nearest Xeraxian world, the enemy finally began to respond. Massive warships, easily dwarfing even the Prometheus, began to rise from the planet's surface. Their hulls writhed with an otherworldly energy that made Sarah's skin crawl. This was entropy technology, corrupted and twisted to serve the Xeraxians' will. Incoming transmission, Lieutenant Patil announced, his voice tight. It's High Commander Zarketh. Sarah's jaw clenched. On screen, the massive Xeraxian's face filled the view screen, his four eyes burning with a mixture of rage and was that fear. Impossible, Zarketh growled, his translator struggling to convey the depth of his anger. You primitives should be nothing but ash. How dare you bring your taint to the heart of our empire? Sarah stepped forward, her voice ringing with authority. High Commander Zarketh, I am Admiral Sarah Chen of Earth. Your invasion of our world failed, and now we've come to ensure you never threaten another species again. Zarketh's face contorted in what might have been a sneer. You fool. You have no idea what forces you're meddling with. The entropy cannot be stopped. It is the true nature of reality, the end of all things. And we are its harbingers. As if to punctuate his words, the Xeraxian ships opened fire. Beams of corrupted energy lanced out, twisting space itself as they approached the Earth fleet. Evasive maneuvers, Sarah shouted. Return fire. The battle that ensued was unlike anything in human history. Ships danced through impossible geometries, weapons fire warped the very fabric of space, and time itself seemed to fluctuate wildly. The Earth fleet, though outnumbered, fought with a ferocity that caught the Xeraxians off guard. Their Guardian-enhanced weapons tore through enemy shields, erasing entire ships from existence. But the Xeraxians gave as good as they got, their entropy-fueled attacks causing havoc among the human forces. As the conflict raged, Dr. Reeves worked feverishly at his station. Admiral, he called out, his voice urgent. I'm detecting massive energy buildups across the Xeraxian worlds. I think they're preparing to activate some kind of superweapon. Sarah's mind raced. They had anticipated this possibility, but the reality of it was still daunting. How long do we have? Reeves shook his head. Minutes, maybe less. Whatever it is, it's drawing power directly from their star. The readings are off the charts. Sarah knew they had only one option. It was risky, potentially catastrophic, but it was their only chance to end this before the Ziraxians could bring their full might to bear. "All ships, fall back to Rally Point Alpha," she commanded. Then, turning to Dr. Reeves, "Prepare to initiate Project Arboros." Reeves paled. "Admiral, we haven't fully tested the system. The consequences could be—" "We don't have a choice," Sarah cut him off. "It's now or never." As the Earth fleet disengaged, pulling back to a predetermined position, Sarah felt a moment of doubt. Project Arboros was the ultimate expression of humanity's newfound ability to manipulate space-time. In theory, it could create a temporal loop, trapping the entire Ziraxian system in a moment of frozen time. But the power required was enormous, and the potential for disaster was incalculable. "All ships, divert all non-essential power to your temporal manipulators," Sarah ordered. "On my mark, we initiate the temporal convergence." The seconds ticked by with agonizing slowness. On the tactical display, Sarah could see the Ziraxian superweapon powering up, a sphere of corrupted energy growing at the heart of their star. "Now," Sarah shouted. As one, the Earth fleet activated their devices. Space itself seemed to scream as the fabric of reality was stretched to its breaking point. A shimmering bubble of distorted time began to form around the Ziraxian system, growing larger with each passing second. But something was wrong. The bubble wasn't stabilizing as they had hoped. Instead, it was fluctuating wildly, sending ripples of temporal energy cascading across the galaxy. "Admiral," Dr. Reeves cried out, "the temporal field is collapsing. It's creating a cascading series of time rifts." Before Sarah could respond, a blinding flash of light engulfed the fleet. When it faded, the view screen showed a scene of utter chaos. The Ziraxian worlds were gone, replaced by a swirling maelstrom of temporal energy. Ships from both sides were being tossed about like leaves in a storm, some vanishing only to reappear moments later, out of phase with normal spacetime. "Status report," Sarah demanded, struggling to make sense of what she was seeing. Lieutenant Patel's voice was shaky as he responded. "Admiral, I don't know how to explain this. We're receiving signals from across time and space. It's like we've shattered the boundaries between realities." As if to confirm his words, the view screen flickered, showing glimpses of other times, other places. Sarah saw Earth as it was millions of years ago, teeming with prehistoric life. She saw possible futures, some where humanity had spread across the stars, others where Earth lay in ruins. And through it all, she sensed something stirring, a presence vast beyond comprehension, ancient beyond measure. The entropy, she realized with a chill. They had drawn its attention. Just then, a new signal cut through the chaos. The Guardian's voice, usually so calm and measured, now tinged with urgency. "Admiral Chen," it said, "what you have done cannot be undone. The barriers between realities are crumbling. The entropy comes." Sarah felt the weight of her decisions pressing down on her. They had come to stop the Ziraxians, to safeguard Earth's future. Instead, they may have doomed all of reality. "What can we do?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. There was a pause before the Guardian responded. "There is a possibility, a desperate gambit. We must use the temporal rifts to our advantage, gather allies from across time and space. Only by uniting all realities do we stand a chance against what comes." As the Guardian spoke, the temporal storm around them intensified. Sarah saw ships appearing out of nowhere, vessels of design she had never seen before, some so advanced they seemed to defy the laws of physics. And there, emerging from a particularly large rift, was a ship that made Sarah's heart skip a beat. It was Earth fleet design, but far more advanced than anything they currently possessed. On its hull, barely visible through the temporal distortions, she could make out a name, HFY Defiant. A transmission crackled through, distorted but unmistakably human. "This is Admiral Chen of the HFY Defiant to all Earth vessels. We've come from 30 years in your future. The war against the entropy has consumed our reality. We're here to make sure that future never comes to pass." Sarah stared at the view screen in shock, looking into the eyes of her older self. The woman on the screen was battle-hardened, her face lined with the weight of untold sacrifices. But there was a fire in her eyes, a determination that Sarah recognized all too well. As more ships continued to pour through the rifts, some human, some clearly alien, but all united in purpose, Sarah realized that the true battle was only just beginning. They had stumbled into a war that spanned not just space, but time itself. "All vessels, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the HFY Prometheus," she announced, her voice steady despite the turmoil in her mind. "We stand at a crossroads of history, all histories. The enemy we face threatens not just our world, not just our time, but all of reality. I know many of you have your own battles, your own wars to fight. But right here, right now, we must stand together." She paused, looking out at the assembled fleet, a force drawn from across the multiverse, perhaps the greatest armada ever assembled. "The entropy believes it is inevitable, that all things must end," Sarah continued. "But we are here to prove them wrong. Today, we fight not just for our homes, our times, our realities. We fight for the very concept of existence itself. And we will not falter. We will not fail. For in this moment, we are all that stands between being and nothingness. And we will stand." As cheers erupted across the comm channels, Sarah turned to her crew. Their faces showed a mixture of fear and determination, mirroring her own emotions. "Dr. Reeves, work with our future selves and any other scientific minds we've acquired. Find a way to stabilize these rifts, to give us control over this temporal storm. Lieutenant Patel, coordinate communications across the fleet. We need a unified command structure if we're going to stand a chance." As her crew sprang into action, Sarah turned back to the view screen. The temporal maelstrom continued to rage, and at its heart, she could sense the entropy gathering its strength. The final battle was approaching, a confrontation that would determine the fate of all existence. Sarah Chen, Admiral of Earth Fleet, took a deep breath. Whatever came next, she knew that the choices made here, in this shattered realm between realities, would echo across eternity. The war for reality itself had begun, and humanity was at its heart. As the combined fleet prepared for battle, Sarah couldn't help but wonder, in the face of such cosmic forces, could the human spirit truly prevail? The answer, she knew, would soon be written across the stars and beyond. Resolution. The multiverse hung in the balance as the combined fleet of countless realities faced the encroaching darkness of the entropy. At the heart of this cosmic maelstrom, the HFY Prometheus served as the linchpin of humanity's last stand. Admiral Sarah Chen stood at the center of the bridge, a beacon of calm in the chaos that surrounded them. Beside her, Dr. Elias Reeves worked feverishly with a team of scientists from across time and space, their minds linked by Guardian technology as they sought to unravel the mysteries of the temporal storm. "Admiral," Reeves called out, his voice tight with a mixture of excitement and fear, "I think we found something. The rifts, they're not just tears in space-time. They're conduits." Sarah turned to him, her brow furrowed. "Conduits to what, Doctor?" Reeves' eyes were wide with wonder. "To the source, Admiral. To the very foundation of reality itself. If we can stabilize these rifts, control them, we might be able to access the underlying structure of the multiverse." Before Sarah could respond, alarms blared across the ship. Lieutenant Patel's voice cut through the noise. Multiple contacts emerging from the temporal distortions. It's the Zoraxians, ma'am, but not like any we've seen before." The view screen flickered to life, showing a sight that defied belief. Where once there had been twisted abominations of entropy, there were now ships of breathtaking beauty. The Zoraxian vessels had been transformed, their hulls gleaming with an inner light that spoke of life and renewal rather than decay and destruction. A transmission cut through the stunned silence. This is This is High Commander Zarketh of the Zeraxian Confederation. What has happened? What have you done? Sarah stepped forward, her voice filled with a mixture of awe and determination. We've changed the rules, High Commander. Entropy is no longer the end of all things. It's a new beginning. As the implications of what they had done began to sink in, reports flooded in from across the fleet. The temporal rifts were healing, realities stabilizing, but they weren't returning to their previous states. Instead, a new multiverse was taking shape around them, one where the constant threat of heat death no longer loomed over all of existence. The Guardian's voice, filled with a joy that transcended words, echoed across the cosmos. You have done it. After eons of struggle, you have found the path we could not see. The cycle is complete, and a new age dawns. As the fleet regrouped, beings from countless realities coming together in a celebration that defied description, Sarah found herself faced with a new challenge. The multiverse had been saved, yes, but it had also been fundamentally altered. The repercussions of their actions would echo across eternity. In the days that followed, a new galactic order began to take shape. The Zeraxians, freed from the corrupting influence of entropy, became allies in exploring the new reality they found themselves in. The Guardians, their ancient purpose fulfilled, prepared to pass on their knowledge to the younger races. And humanity, the species that had reshaped reality itself, found itself at the center of it all. With their unique ability to manipulate space-time, they became the bridge builders, the peacekeepers, the explorers of this new cosmic frontier. As for Admiral Sarah Chen, she stood once more at the viewport of Lunar Base Alpha, gazing out at the Earth. The planet seemed somehow brighter now, more vibrant, as if reflecting the new reality they had created. "Penny for your thoughts, Admiral," Dr. Reeves asked, joining her at the window. Sarah smiled, a gesture that held both joy and a touch of melancholy. "I was just thinking about everything we've been through, everything we've changed. We set out to save Earth, and we ended up reshaping the entire multiverse." Reeves nodded, his eyes distant. "It's a heavy responsibility. The choices we make now will echo across realities for eons to come." "True," Sarah replied. "But for the first time in, well, ever, we're making those choices freed from the shadow of inevitable destruction. We've given the multiverse a chance at true immortality." As if to punctuate her words, a shimmering portal opened in the space before them. Through it, they could see glimpses of other worlds, other realities, all teeming with life, with possibility. A young ensign approached, snapping to attention. "Admiral, the Interstellar Council is ready for you. Representatives from 100 realities are waiting to begin the first session." Sarah nodded, straightening her uniform. The war was over, yes, but the work of building this new multiverse was just beginning. As she prepared to step through the portal, to take humanity's place among the cosmos, she felt a sense of boundless optimism. They had faced the end of all things and emerged victorious. They had rewritten the very laws of reality. And now, with the combined knowledge and wisdom of countless civilizations at their fingertips, they were poised to embark on the greatest adventure of all, shaping the destiny of an infinite multiverse. As Sarah Chen, Admiral of Earth Fleet and architect of a new reality, stepped into the unknown, she carried with her the hopes and dreams of not just humanity, but of all beings across all realities. The celestial gambit had paid off, and the game was only just beginning. The end.